Dancing Rabbit, and welcome to another Saturday Pagan Perspective. Doing this one inside because it's a dark and very rainy Saturday here in Houston. If I seem a little tired, a little kind of out of it, I'm just really tired from a hard week at work, my new day job. So let's get on to the question. The question this week has to do with folk magic. What is it, and personal experiences with it. Folk magic is the magic of the common people. And just like folk tales, the folk magic is, or at least originally, was transmitted as part of the oral tradition. It was transmitted by word of mouth. It was not something that was written down. So we have, even going back to the Renaissance and perhaps into the Middle Ages, we have official books of ceremonial and high magic. But while the educated, the literate people were reading books and writing books and studying books, the common people were practicing folk magic. Now, my experience with folk magic, one of the family stories in my family is about Granny Sara Martin. This would be my mother's father's grandmother, if you kind of get the drift of this sort of southern convoluted genealogy. Anyway, Sara Martin lived in the Ozark Mountains in north central Arkansas with her husband, her family, back in the 1860s. And the story is that when somebody got sick, I guess somebody in the family or the community got sick, Sara would go out into the woods and gather herbs, plants, and make some sort of medicine, tea or poultice, and I don't know how many people she actually cured, but that was what she did. She was an herb woman. These folks are sometimes called granny women, because usually they were older women. Now that's really about all I know about Sara's use of herbalism or folk magic. I am sure that she didn't consider herself a witch. She probably considered herself a healer, someone that could go out and make medicine to take care of sick folks. Her father was a man named Dr. William Wiles. Now, whether he was actually a real medical doctor who graduated from a medical school, or perhaps he was a patent medicine salesman that traveled around, or possibly he was an herbalist, and that's where she got her knowledge. In any case, except for that and several other colorful stories about Granny Sara, apparently she did all of this herbal stuff in secret, and if she told anybody, I don't know about it. If she taught it to anyone else in the family, it didn't pass down to my branch of the family. I wish it had. I think that that's part of the thing with folk magic, since it is an oral tradition. If it's not passed down to somebody, then it dies out. Now, you can find some books about folk magic, traditional witchcraft, and I'm always a little suspicious of how much of that is really real. Is this a person who actually experienced this in their family tradition, and is now revealing it to the rest of us, or is this just somebody who did maybe some internet research or maybe did some interviews and was just writing a book? Now, as far as living traditions of folk magic, I guess there are two ways that you could look at it. On the one hand, there are some purists who feel like that the only real folk magic is stuff that is done exactly like it was done hundreds of years ago. There have been no changes. Others who are practicing folk magic in a more of an adaptive way, they're using the authentic folk practices that they learned But just like their ancestors adapted, changed, modified things, they change and modify things and add things in and out. Folk magic is, in my opinion, very similar to kitchen witchery, kitchen witchcraft, where you're basically using the common things that you happen to have around the house, rather than going to a magical store and buying special magical equipment. I suspect that my great-great-great-grandmother didn't go down to the magic shop and buy anything. I suspect she actually bought very little because they were subsistence farmers and really didn't operate with cash. Her husband, Sara Martin, was not literate. He didn't even write his own name. I've looked at some of his Civil War papers, enlistment and discharge papers, and he signed them with an X and had someone witness it. So, like I said, this was an oral tradition. There are a couple of, I guess you'd call them schools or traditions of folk magic that I'm interested in. I'm doing a little research, learning a little about. One of them is root work, and the other, which is closely related, is brujeria. Now, I don't claim to be a conjure man or a brujo. These are things that I understand you are born into. But, you know, perhaps I inherited some of those genes from my great-great-great-grandmother. Or perhaps I was a brujo in a previous life and am just now discovering it. In any case, I don't make any pretense of being an expert practitioner, but I do find it very interesting. It's a completely different style of magic than the Wiccan-based stuff that I originally learned from books. And while I'm still basically practicing a Wiccan-based ethic, I think these other forms of magic, these other traditions of magic are interesting and they're useful. And I'd encourage the viewers to share folk magic traditions, folk magic practices that they've learned, and maybe where you've learned them from or where you're studying them. You know, add to the discussion here. In any case, I've got lots of other work to do here on Saturday, and so I'd better close this one down and see if I can't edit it and upload it. So till next week, Dancing Rabbit, peace.